Our speaker for today is Dr. Roni Ellington. She's a mathematics education professor, inspirational speaker, and STEM education scholar and mentor. Dr. Roni has spent the last 18 years cultivating herself as a teacher, speaker, scholar, and personal development expert. Trained as a mathematics educator, Dr. Roni Ellington has authored several scholarly articles on STEM education, parental involvement, and successfully navigating the STEM pipeline, particularly for minority students. As a co-owner in Evoke Life, Dr. Ellington is an expert on transformation learning and personal mastery. As a licensed practitioner, she's committed to bringing this teaching to the masses through teaching and is extremely grateful to serve this community in whatever way is aligned with her spiritual mission. Welcome, Dr. Roni.
Hey, everyone. So before I get started, I just wanted to say one thank you for everyone who is on the call. I am deeply humbled and grateful to be able to have this particular conversation around freedom. It got me thinking deeply about what that really means. And I pray that all of you bring to this conversation an open mind, a receptive mind, as you rethink what you think freedom is and where freedom is actually coming from. So it's in that spirit that I say thank you and welcome. I always believe that anything I'm speaking about is for me. You just happen to be the beneficiaries because there's only one of us here. So anytime I speak, I'm like, okay, God, this is something I need to learn. And Spirit is giving me an opportunity to share it as I learn it. So this month, we're in a new month, July. And this month is all about unchained spirituality, releasing the residual chains on our minds, on our spirits, on anything that we have that is holding us back. This month is about setting that free. So this is the first week of the month, and the theme is free at last. Isn't that something? And in the notes, so as ministers, we receive notes from CSL home office to kind of help guide our thinking around the topic. We can take elements, remix them, or do our own thing. But I thought to keep this particular statement around Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. when he said, free at last, thank God Almighty, I'm free at last. This was a powerful call to action that was specifically for us to move and be free. He was talking about it inside of a political context, but it really does ring true for all of us in every moment. How do we let freedom ring? How do we ring the bell of freedom, even when we may have been unconscious for however long we've been unconscious? But in any moment, we can ring the bell of freedom in our consciousness. And in that moment, we wake up. So I just love this idea that in any moment, you are free at last. I don't care if you felt unfree for 10 years, 10 minutes, or 10,000 years. You can be free in any moment. So this really just set up this talk today. Yeah, so I just wanted to say that. So we've heard this statement that freedom is our birthright, right? This is not new for those of us who are in science of mind, that freedom is not something you necessarily attain, but it's your birthright. However, there's a forgetfulness that has fallen over the cloud of humanity that has had us forget that freedom is our birthright. And then there's some of us who now have these efforts to get free, be free, break through from freedom, all of these different words. But this idea that it's our birthright is at the heart of the science of mind teaching. So the scholar I am, I always go to definitions. I'm gonna come back to that statement. I go to definitions just to get me grounded in the public conversation about a particular term or idea. So if you look at these definitions, I just looked them up. There are three major houses in which the definition of freedom rests. So one is the state of not being imprisoned or enslaved. The other one is absent of subjugation to foreign domination or despotic government, and the power or right to act, speak, and think as one wants without hindrance or restraint. So I invite you to just sit with these definitions and ask yourself the question, where are these definitions coming from? You know, remember I said last week, when I talk about intention or I talk about anything, I don't necessarily just talk about it from its face value. I'm always looking for what is the mentality or the mindset that gives rise to the definition. What is the way of being that makes these definitions similar to or different from each other? So if you think about these definitions, do you believe they're coming from? Okay, so that's something I just want you to sit with. So I think about the first one and I think of not to be slaves. So there's this freedom from something like slavery or oppression. So this idea that where this is coming from, that is one is already enslaved and now freedom is about breaking through that slavery or moving from that. So there's a getting free, okay? The second one is the absence of something, which implies that freedom is about something not being present that allows us to then move freely or because there are no constraints. And then the last one is grounded in a power definition, which means you have the power. It's not necessarily freedom from something or the absence of something, it's the presence of the power or right to act, speak, or think as one wants without hindrance. So, depending on which definition of freedom you're coming from, one implies there's something you're breaking from, one implies that there's something absent that allows you to move, and then the other one implies that it is a power or right with no regard for what's in the way or what an absence of. So, as you think about your own freedom, I just invite you to think about which of these definitions are you coming from? Okay, so I just put that out there and I'm going to expand this definition. It asked me, you know, as I thought about this, anytime I'm thinking about where someone is coming from, I'm reminded of Brother Beckwith's 4 stages of consciousness. And as an educator, I always revisit and bring things back because as I revisit and bring things back, it deepens my understanding of how all of this knowledge is connected. So remember last week I talked about, and I think the week before when I talked about intention, there Michael Beckwith proposes that there are 4 stages of spiritual growth or 4 levels of consciousness around our spiritual growth. So just to recap, there is to me, which means there's a victim consciousness, right? When you think about things being done to me, this is the level of consciousness where there's something outside of you that's making things happen in your life. Testing, rewarding, punishing. Life appears to be governed by external forces. And the dominant experience in this phase is powerlessness. So again, I don't suggest any of my fellow brothers and sisters in science of mind live consistently there because we know better, but there are probably areas where we dip into this notion that there's an external force that is operating on our lives and we have little say about it. So to evolve from this level of consciousness, you must give up any blame, shame, guilt, or being a victim. Now, if you think about freedom from this vantage point, think about it as freedom from being a victim, right? So it's very consistent with that first definition that I proposed. Then as we elevate into stage 2, there's this idea that life is happening by me. This is where we gain some sense of control. We evolve from a sense of victimhood. We are releasing any blame, shame, and guilt, and we learn that God is within me. There are laws that I can use to effectively change and claim dominion over my life. I can control my thoughts. My thoughts become things. That's where a lot of those conversations dwell. I accept full responsibility for my life. Now, again, this is a powerful place to be, because as you've lived in a victim space and you move here, there is a sense of power. However, this is only phase 2, as I've said before. And to move out of that, or to move and elevate a consciousness beyond that, we give up control and the illusion of power. And so at this stage, freedom is very much like freedom to do something, freedom to express, freedom to do, to move, to act. Whereas at level 1, there was no freedom. Also, level 2 freedom is freedom from the shackles of victimization. Can you see that? That they're moving from something, and then you're moving to a broader expression of oneself. However, that's only one level. That's only 2. If we move into level 3, we are now looking at life as happening through me. This is where we continue to evolve, and we release the control, and we learn to establish dominion over our lives. But now we say, okay, there's more to life than this. There's more to life than me trying to get my needs met, or to, manifest a parking space, or to get money, or to get a relationship, or to use laws to get things we think we want. So at this stage, we surrender. At this stage, we give up control and allow an intelligence that's beyond what we know to guide our thoughts, feelings, emotions, and actions. At level 3, I think of it as freedom of, not just freedom to, but freedom of expression, freedom of allowing the spirit to move in, through, and as us at higher and higher consciousness levels. But to evolve from this state, which is a high state of consciousness, we must release any vestiges of ego identification and separation, and any residual belief that there is another from which to be free from. See, at this stage, you start to realize that there is no other. The ego dominated thinking becomes something that we have an ego, but we're not dominated by it. And then we can move into stage 4, where these last vestiges of separation are then released. This is where Jesus operated from when he said, I and the Father are one. So I think of this as freedom for a bigger goal, freedom for something grander. So as I look at the word freedom, I just go back and say, okay, let's look at those 4 perspectives on life, and then talk about the freedom that's available. So clearly at level 1, there's no freedom. You're at the effect, you're the victim of, you're reacting to compulsions, you're reacting to what's happening external. When you're freed and you're in that second phase, you're freedom from limitations. So when you move into level 2, you are free from limitations, victimizations, bondage, subjugation. So your freedom moves from no freedom to freedom from. And then within this same space, now that you're free from limitations, now you're free to vision, create, respond, act, plan, right? This is what I call the doing phase. This is when we doing our freedom. Okay, now that we have broken the shackles, we can then do more by conscious declaration. However, when we move to level 3, there's this freedom of expression, freedom of being a channel. This is where we do envisioning as a practice, because we recognize that even though we had the freedom to do, the question becomes, what is our highest thing to do, guided by the indwelling presence that is God as us, through us. And then when we relinquish separation and the ego, we can now have freedom for God, oneness, legacy. We now are free for something bigger than us. It ain't ever even about us. We are free for service because we recognize that our lives are simply a vessel for serving humanity. So as I think about that, I say, okay, Ronnie, this sounds great. But there are certain areas of my life where I am still victimized. I may not be as victimized as I once were, right? Like, as if there are levels of victimization, but that's a different conversation. So this wheel is a way we use this in our work at Evoke to really look at different areas of your life. Again, I'm not going to go into the explaining of that, but it's a way to divide your life into mind, body, spirit. So there's your fitness, your lifestyle, your well-being, connections, source, and creativity. So what we do is we take clients through grading their life on a scale from 1 to 10 as it relates to satisfaction and fulfillment. What I invite you to do is to look at these areas and say, how free am I in these areas? Am I free? Do I have no freedom? Am I free from something? Because there's this pressure to move out of something. Am I now free to do something in this area? Am I free for full expression? Or am I free just to be in these areas? So as I looked at these areas of fitness, lifestyle, connections, well-being, source, and creativity, I realized that depending on where I am in my life and what aspect of my life I'm addressing in any moment, my experience of freedom is very different. And I will tell you, because I'm transparent, the one for connections is still one. That no matter how much I say I'm free to express and I'm free to serve, there are times where I'm just trying to break free of the bondage of other people's expectations, other people's views of me, perceptions of me, and particularly being an African American female, the way society has framed my existence, I'm breaking free from that. So again, depending on where I'm coming from in whatever area, my experience of freedom may be different. So I just invite you, as you think about those different levels of consciousness and the freedom attached, where are you fully free to be? Where are you a channel? Where are you just trying to break free from to do some things you want? And where there's no freedom, where you are at the effect of life, at the effect of what's going on. So here, I got to pull Ernest in the mix. He said the science of mind is intensively practical because it teaches us how to use the mind principle for definite purpose, such as helping those who are sick, impoverished, or unhappy. I look at this as freedom from. See, we then become instruments for others so that they can be free from sickness, impoverishment, and unhappiness. Nothing's wrong here, but again, as we elevate, we start to see that it's even beyond just freedom from this idea of being free for a higher purpose, freedom to express, etc. So again, another quote here, living without fear, right? So when see that absence of fear, right? Remember I told you that second level definition, the road of freedom lies not through mysteries or occult performances, but through the intelligent use of natural forces and laws. See, now when we're here, we can use our understanding of law to do and be free, to express, to do something that before was prohibitive. All right. And then here's got to bring in my attention scale. I love it. I think it's the truth teller. This is a different conversation. So if you think about the goal of being fully free, being at that level 4, like literally free to be, where you're not governed by other people's perspectives. You're not governed by being free to do something. You are beyond just channeling. You are just being. What is your intention level as it relates to being fully free? Are you somewhere suffering where you are resenting and sabotaging your own freedom? Are you struggling to get free where you're trying to break out of constraints? Are you sacrificing? This is a place particularly where we women love to dwell. We like to sacrifice, killing our gifts off for some noble idea. So we give up our freedom for something we perceive as noble, right? I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but I'm just speaking from my experience. I used to do this in my motherhood, where I would feel the need to sacrifice my freedom for my daughter, which she didn't ask me to do, but that's a whole nother story. But it's grounded in the race consciousness around motherhood that you sacrifice. How many of us are settling in our freedom? We know that there's some things we could take on, but we're settling. Everything's okay in our freedom. You know, we free from a lot of things that used to impede us, but we not necessarily free for full self-expression or free to serve at the highest level. Are we still striving, doing a lot of work to get free? Are we seeking? Are we asking others to give us freedom? See, these are all, if you think about it, you are at some space on this intention scale as it relates to being fully free. It's not wrong or bad. It's just what's to notice, because that's where your consciousness is dwelling. All right. So again, I can do this. I can do a whole 6 month session on freedom, but I'm going to just give y'all a taste. Now, the question now, so now that we've got grounded in definition, we see the different ways we can come from in terms of spiritual consciousness around freedom. We looked at our areas of life and said, yeah, in some areas I'm, quote, more or less free than others. This piece actually I love, because Michael Beckwith talks about the 4 pillars of freedom. And what he argues is in order for you to be fully free, you have to cultivate these pillars. And if you think about 4 pillars holding up a building, if one is shaky, that building doesn't have a lot of stability. So this is what got me, when you want to be free, but there are these pillars that you have to really sit with in order to really be grounded in your own freedom. So let's just briefly go through them. And then again, just like with the freedom from, freedom to, the question is, which of these pillars are rocky in your life? Which ones are solid when it comes to your freedom? So the first one is self-discipline. Self-discipline comes from the word disciple, meaning a disciple of what you already know, where you listen, learn, and apply the things you already know. You have the discipline of application and being willing to embody that which you already know to be true. And then the second pillar is all about self-responsibility, which is the ability to respond to the innate freedom that is within you, the ability to respond to your highest nature. In this pillar, when you find yourself reacting, this pillar is a little shaky. See, when you have grounded this pillar of freedom, you know how to be responsible 100% in all areas of your life. There's nothing being done to you. You are responsible for the life you're living. Then this gives rise to self-awareness, which is this third pillar. And self-awareness is the ability to be aware of myself without judgment, to stop going unconscious, noticing my thoughts, my feelings, my body sensations in any moment without judgment, being fully aware of who you are and where you're coming from and what you're up to in any moment, in any day. Noticing when your intention starts to slip. Notice when you don't have a real goal and objective that is driving you at the highest level. So that awareness, again, it's no judgment on it, but the more aware you are, the more you're able to see yourself fully. And then the last pillar of freedom is the wisdom of knowing who you are at a soul level and express this fully. The wisdom, we call this the wisdom pillar. This is the wisdom of remembering why you're here and what you're here for, which at its highest level is to love, to express fully what our gifts are, and to know that that's really who we are, the remembrance. So, as Ernest Holmes says, the divine plan is one of freedom. The inherent nature of man is ever seeking to express itself in terms of freedom, because freedom is the birthright of every living soul. Notice this is this freedom of and freedom for expressing our divine nature. Now, Ernest said all of these, but notice that different quotes come from different places, because as science of mind practitioners, it depends on the consciousness. For some of us, being free from is a solid goal. Then there's some of us where we've moved from being free, breaking free of something, to now being free to and to be at a higher level. So Ernest was talking here from that perspective. And I go back to as where I began, Brother Martin Luther King, who says everybody can be great because everybody can serve. I think of this as the highest level of freedom for service, freedom for moving the consciousness of society to more and more humanity, freedom for building a legacy of love, freedom for something that is in our souls to be expressed beyond our meager needs and wants. To serve, to me, is the highest form of freedom. Your freedom is a gift to the world. As you become more and more free in your expression, more and more free in the areas of your life, you can be with people without an agenda, without needing to prove anything, get someone to learn anything, convince them of anything. That is a gift, to be a clearing for the divine. Most people don't even get heard at a deep level. Can you imagine being that gift for people, where you are so free that no matter what they bring to the table, no matter what they are bringing, you can be with it and be free to respond. You have the self-discipline to be able to check your own triggers. You have the discipline to apply what you know. You have the self-remembrance that we are one. So whatever they're bringing, it ain't just them, it's you, because it's you and that brother are one. That's a gift. So you don't free yourself just so you can get a parking space or a couple more dollars in your bank account, although those are great. You free yourself so you can be a gift to the world. So as you think about, I said a lot here, I know it's dense, but come join us on Thursday. We unpack it a little deeper. I invite you this week to contemplate on your personal definition and experience of freedom. Looking at those areas of your life, which stage of consciousness do you feel freedom? No freedom, where you're at the effect. Freedom from, where you're breaking through. Freedom to, where you're trying to do something, you're trying to move something. Freedom of is where you're trying to express something that's coming through you as a channel. And then freedom for this higher good of service, if you will. So develop a strategy that you can use to elevate your experience of freedom in each area of your life. Ask Spirit to guide you as you explore how to do this. Give up the need to get it right or figure it out. One of the ways in which we bound ourselves is this gotta figure it out. See, when you're in that channel consciousness and being consciousness, there's nothing to figure out. Right? You don't got to figure it out. Practice the 4 pillars of freedom in your life and identify which pillars could use some attention. They got a couple cracks in it. And then up level your spiritual practice to support your expanded experience of freedom. So I just say thank you for listening. Thank you for bringing your full consciousness to this conversation. I believe in my spirit that as you elevate where you're coming from, as you elevate into those higher levels of spiritual growth, freedom, that birthright I talked about earlier, would be more and more in your experience, not just as a tagline. And so it is. Thank you so much.